All right. Good evening, everybody. Greg Pruitt here, Freedom Bro number one. And you'll notice I am solo right now because Freedom Bro number two, Dustin Hurst, is working. He thinks that's more important, I guess. I'll have to talk to him about that a little bit later on. But really excited to bring you episode 15. And I guess you could call this an historic episode, if you will, because of this right here. And we're going to maybe there it goes. There it goes. That is the mugshot of President Donald Trump, and boy, oh boy, this is something else. This is something else. So we're going to get into that. We are going to get into interviewing Senator Glenneda Zuiderveld. I'm probably butchering her name, so I apologize. I always call her Glenneda because she's a friend. So I'm probably screwing up her last name, and I apologize. We're going to be talking to her about an Idaho Department of Health and Welfare scandal that she essentially helped broke a number of months ago that now has finally come to fruition through an independent investigation. We're going to be talking to Maria and Ron Nate as well about the Idaho political landscape, and in particular, the Main Street Caucus or Main Street Republicans or some other stupid name that it's going by. We're going to be talking about that as well. But first, let us roll our very over the top stinger right now. This is the Freedom Bros podcast. All right. So with that, before we get to Glenneda, I wanted to this is disturbing, and I know all the liberals are really excited about this, but you have to understand what this really means because we are now just arresting political opponents all across the country. This DA in Georgia is out of her freaking mind. This is an absolute political witch hunt. Everything about this is corrupt. And look, I have a lot of disagreements with Donald Trump, in particular Second Amendment issues, because quite frankly, he's terrible on the Second Amendment. Okay. As are most Republicans when it really comes down to it. But despite everything I disagree with President Trump on, this is outrageous. And the fear is it only gets worse from here because now the liberals are going after Donald Trump, and next it's going to be Republicans are like, well, if you're going to arrest our guy, then we're going to start arresting your people. And then it just spirals from there to where both sides are just arresting their political opponents. And that doesn't lead to anything good. Okay. Anybody that's ever been in a place like Iraq, like I have, or you look at North Korea and communist China, okay, they go out and arrest political opponents and either jail them or execute them. And so we are on a very, very dangerous path that, good gosh, I hope that I don't know how we go back now. Like we can't go back. And so Donald Trump, by the way, is now back on Twitter. He posted his own mugshot, and I think it said revenge or something like that. And, so he's back on Twitter. That will probably be the most tweeted meme of all time, or excuse me, the most reposted tweet of all time. But he's back on Twitter, at least for that particular post. I don't know if he's going to come back permanently because he said he wasn't going to. But yeah, just I don't know. I guess pray for our country because on top of all the other horrible, awful things going on and what the liberals are trying to do to little kids, now we're arresting political opponents, and that's 100% what is driving all of these arrests right now of Donald Trump. And again, somebody who I disagree with on a number of issues, and sometimes I wish he would just stop talking. But this is beyond dangerous, and I really do fear for our country and where we are headed. So with that, I do want to just jump right into Senator. How do you say your last name so I don't keep butchering it?
Zuiderveld.
Zuiderveld. Okay, I'm sorry.
Zuiderveld.
Is that
Yep.
is
Just
that
look at his
German?
guide. Guide Zuiderveld.
Zuiderveld. Okay. Is it German or what is that?
It's Dutch. Dutch.
Dutch. Okay. Okay. Awesome. So I guess what this is an issue that probably not a lot of people are going to understand right away. And I'm not going to pretend like I know all the nuances and details of how this all came about. And it just broke. And Dustin was like, hey, let's bring Glenneda on the show and talk about this. And then I'm trying to go back and do more research on exactly what happened. But if you can, just briefly tell people how this all started and kind of where we're at now.
Okay, thanks, Greg. And yeah, I'll start with how it all came about. And so when I have lobbyists and people come into my office, because I am 100% the people's senator, I belong to them. They helped get me to this position, which is giving me freedom to um, be able to represent them. And so when they come into my office, I always make sure that they all understand that I'm there to vote right, to be transparent, and to expose corruption. And then I have a canvas on my wall that has the 19.6 Code of Ethics for Government Services. And it gives you 10 things that we should be doing for our government and code of ethics. And number 9 is expose corruption wherever discovered. And so
Okay.
I always kind of point, so that's always kind of a conversation that a lot of the lobbyists and I have in my office. So the one lobbyist that we had that discussion with left, and then he came back early the next morning and asked if it was okay if he came in and talked to me, that he didn't have an appointment. And I'm like, sure, come on in. And he said that after our conversation yesterday, he had a difficult time sleeping, and if I was really 100% sure I wanted to expose corruption. And I'm like, 100%, because why have bills if we're not upholding those laws? Then you're
Sure.
sending your legislator there to basically make bills but not uphold them, or to make sure that they're being upheld. And so then when I said that, he puts about an inch thick file on my desk, and he says, I have $10 million worth of evidence of misappropriations of health and welfare. And I have all the FOIAs and and then he proceeded to tell me how when Representative Priscilla Ginnings and Ron Nate, former representatives, were working in JFACT with the CARES, and then it was also part of the Community Partners Grant, where they fought really hard to make sure that this money came in, and it was almost not approved, but because they were allowed to make it where it was for ages 5 to 13, no preschool age, 4 years or younger. So this money was appropriated specifically for 5 to 13-year-olds. Well, my whistleblower had done all the legwork, and he found that they were giving about $10 million. I think it's more than that now, but $10 million worth of that money was going to that pre-K, even against what they said in the appropriations should take place.
Okay.
And so
So
that
sorry, real quick. Is this all COVID money? Is that what you're talking
it's
about?
part of the CARES and the ARPA.
Okay.
Yeah. So then when we were talking about it, I thought, wow, this is big. And because he had mentioned Priscilla and Ron Nate's name, I says, do you mind if I verify this? I really work hard to have good integrity, and I want to protect my name. And he says, absolutely, no problem. And so that's when I actually called in our Idaho Freedom Caucus director, Maria Nate, and I said, you won't believe what happened. And I shared the information with her, and I says, can you, because I'm, of course I'm busy doing committees and everything else.
Sure.
I said, can you take this to Ron and see if he can verify this information for me? And then we need to discuss what we need to do next. And so I think it was at the end of the day, I get a call back, and they're like, oh my goodness, this is accurate. We need to do an article. So Idaho Freedom Foundation did the article to expose that. And then from there, then that engaged the AG's office, because we had taken those steps. And then later on, I went to a meeting with the whistleblower to the Attorney General's office and showing them the evidence and talking about it. And they asked what we expected them to do. And we were like, well, it's breaking the law. We think that you should investigate and prosecute where
Was this
needed.
AG Labrador or AG Wasden?
AG Labrador.
Okay.
So it was this session. Yeah. And so then they just kind of took it and started investigating it. And it's interesting because shortly after that, they started getting some lawsuits. Representative Greg Cheney was
Mm,
actually representing a few of the lawsuits against them, saying that, they just didn't have a right to go in and investigate that, and had different suits, but they weren't winning any of those lawsuits because they actually had the evidence to the misappropriations. And then
okay.
they ordered the audit, which you see. And the audit
Yeah.
was actually supposed to come out last month, but it didn't come out until just recently.
Okay. And so what did the audit find in the end? Because I think there was like 8 findings, and if you don't have them all in front of you, that's fine. But what was kind of the
I
overall?
So what they found, and I do have it, is 55 pages audit, and it's very interesting. So one of the findings was they actually were only supposed to appropriate up to $36,000. They actually went over that by 400 and some $1,000.
Jeez.
And I haven't got to the part where the director Dave Jepson was saying that, that's just kind of a flexible number that's not there, but that's not accurate. When you give an appropriation, you don't get to go above that number, and I think a lot of places probably actually do that, where that's where the supplementals come in,
Sure.
because they go over their budget, that. And I always ask, then that's not a balanced budget if you go over your budget. But so then the other thing that they were uh, showing again was the finding was, I'm trying to find it here. But anyway, another one of the findings was that they gave it to the preschoolers, and they had a total of 145 total approved grants. And then it goes down further and it says for the grant phase 1, there was 30 of the 76 scoring rubrics used for grant approvals were unavailable to review. And so, so they don't even really have a complete audit here, because a lot of them is not even, they didn't get all of May done because of the timing of the audit. So it's still not even a complete audit. But with this audit, they're finding that, they purposely, in my opinion, I guess I better throw that out there. In my
There's a bunch
opinion,
of Sue happy people in this state,
I
so you better
know,
add in my opinion to every freaking thing you say on this show.
I know, and especially when you're taking on health and welfare.
Right.
In my opinion, they broke the law. It was defined for them what they should be doing, and they didn't follow the law. And then now we're seeing them trying to justify their actions, and we're struggling also with the judicial branch, trying to get them to hear it. There's some pushback with the judicial branch where the health and welfare is concerned, and and maybe that's why my whistleblower asked if I was 100% sure I wanted
Yeah.
corruption. But I believe that part of our problem in just not even the United States, in Idaho, I mean, here in our little old Idaho, people don't want to expose the corruption, and that's part of our problem, is we're not having enough courage to expose this corruption. And that's a lot of money for our taxpayers.
Yeah.
And if this is what they're doing here, I always say, if you can break the law in little, you're probably going to break it in much. And
Sure.
so where else are we going to find that? And hopefully, I'm hoping with all of this, it might encourage other people that are seeing and have evidence of them breaking the law, that will come forward, and we can start pushing back against this, because the government is not above the law.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of the problem, Glenita, is that nobody ever feels, especially if you're on the right, nobody ever feels like there's accountability for the other side. And by the other side, I mean like flaming liberal Democrats or stuff like this, right? Where I assume most of the people that are involved in this are probably registered Republicans. And so it just never seems like the moderate Republicans or the liberal Democrats ever get held accountable for anything. It just seems like the justice system is constantly attacking people like you, people like the Nates, people, like myself and Dustin and President Trump and everything else. And so I think that's maybe part of the reason nobody wants to talk about the corruption within government is because they're so afraid of it just turns right back on them, right? And
It,
they end up getting attacked. Do you think that's part of it?
I think it is, because it's not easy. It's not definitely not for the faint of heart, because you do get called out, and I know a lot of them really worry about reelection,
Yeah.
and they're very careful what they do there, and then some of them actually will even state that they work for the governor, and that we have to get what he wants through, and people need to realize too that our governor actually appoints a lot of these positions.
Yeah.
So if the corruption is coming from the people that he's appointing, to me, the right thing would be for him to fire them.
Yeah.
If and if he doesn't fire them, then we have to look at why is he not wanting to fire the people that he hired in these positions, and it is hard to go against that because of just the media is not in your favor when you do something like this. But for me, when you have the evidence and right from wrong,
Yeah.
I have an obligation, I have a duty to my constituents to do this. That's what they sent me there for. They didn't send me to be weak-hearted and not fight for them. They sent me there to fight for them and be courageous. And it's kind of like with I think it's Billy Graham that was saying uh, that courage is contagious, and when one brave man takes a stand, the spines of others are often stiffened. And I think we just need to start having that, where one at a time we're rising up to the corruption. And there's a lot of stuff going on within our own Idaho state government. A lot of people don't want to
Sure.
believe it. That's the other problem, is it is hard to think that your own government people that are your neighbors, because represent my be in the Senate here. I'm amongst my constituents all the time. It would be hard for them to think that I would bring harm to them in such way.
Right.
And so I think a lot of it is they just don't want to believe that that's that can happen, that they're actually doing that. But it's there, it's happening.
Yeah, and you bring up an interesting point on the media. Um, the mainstream media a long time ago used to kind of hold government accountable on both sides, and it's just not that way anymore. And the Idaho media in particular is awful. Like, they are terrible people. They're terrible at their jobs because all
Oh,
they do is focus on attacking, again, people like you and Tammy Nichols, and you guys put out a tweet, right, that's taken out of context, and it's headline news, right? And something like this, it's gotten a little bit of media coverage, I think. But if this was a Labrador, let's say Labrador's governor, and this was a Labrador appointed Idaho Department of Health and Welfare head, you can bet it would be running nonstop on the media, right? And so there's no faith in the justice system holding people accountable, and there's no faith in the media
right.
holding people accountable.
And people are starting to lose that trust and lose hope. And I think that's one thing. That's the reason why we need to go and fight and expose a lot of this corruption, is to give them hope and to maybe encourage them to, that it's worth fighting for. And that's what I'm hoping for.
So what do you know? Is there a certain dollar amount that they've kind of compiled and said X amount of dollars was misappropriated? Do you
You
know?
know what? It's about 10 million that was misappropriated at this time. I haven't been through the whole pages, all of the pages, but out of the 36 million that was appropriated for 2022, they exceeded it by 427,000 and some change. And the misappropriation, where it went to the programs that it was not supposed to go to, um, was about $10 million worth. And that was
Wow.
funny too. When he came into my office, he said, it's only $10 million worth, like it was small, but in the grand scheme, we have a $13.9 billion budget, and our health and welfare is 4.4
Yeah.
billion. So I guess 10 million is a small number, but I'm like, it didn't matter if it was $100. If they broke the law and they misappropriated it, it needs to be exposed, and so
Yeah.
that we won't continue to do that.
Yeah. Well, no, and so it's funny because you're mentioning that, and I'm having flashbacks of right after we had Talmadge, our youngest child. It was right in the middle of campaign season, and we were running a TV ad, I think in Christie's district, and the expenditures would have went over to where I would have needed a 48-hour report, and I was a day late. Okay, my fault. I'll take accountability for being a day late on filing the report. And all of a sudden, freaking left-wing blogger Betsy Russell's calling me like, "Hey, so why are you 1 day late on this report?" And I'm just like, are you serious right now? This is it? And I'm like, okay, so you
It's
know,
completely double standards. I'm
yeah,
on the welfare board and vice chair on the Senate side, and I'm also sitting on the managed Medicaid task force. And I'm listening to a lot of doctors, and if they don't dot their T right, or if they do something wrong, not they have to like pay that money back with penalties.
yeah,
So here they're getting trouble for just having a small error, but here's this big error from Dave Jepson and his crew there, and we're going to overlook it. I even get people saying, well, it's going to children, so what does it matter? They broke
jeez,
the law. They broke the law. And part of the reason why it wasn't supposed to go to the preschool age is there was a lot of CRT and a lot of the other stuff entwined in it, and they just didn't want that for the preschoolers. So there was a lot of background to the reason why it was not going to that preschool age. And it doesn't matter. This was the law. This is what was set before them. They follow it just like the rest of us do.
yeah. So what you talked about Dave Jepson, and he's the director of IDHW. So do you, I mean, the buck always stops obviously with the top person, right? So it certainly would stop with him if there are allegations of corruption or misappropriation of funds or whatever charges may potentially come from it, if any. Um, does it look like he was the one that was really making the decisions in that, or is it some of his underlings that were you know doing stuff on the side? Is there any of that that's come out in this report?
Yeah, it's a lot of his underlings, but again, he has a lot of responsibility because he actually hires them. It comes from him
Sure.
hiring them, but a lot of it came from, and I can't find their names here offhand. That was doing it all, and I, being new, I don't know all their names yet. So there's actually like three or four of them that were directly involved with the grant process, and so they overlooked it. And I think that some of them have already quit. From my understanding, they quit shortly after they started investigating because the AG's office did like 30 to 50 subpoenas, and so some of them quit right away, and one of them even actually had a government phone that she reset back to government or to factory settings.
Oh
And
wow.
thinking, wow, to me, that's admitting guilt, when you're
Yeah.
erasing a government phone to factory settings. And so there's just a lot of, interesting things that are coming about in this. And I think we're probably going to see a lot more. And I really want to encourage the Attorney General's office to continue to investigate with this, because we owe it to the people, that's their money. We have to be very responsible with their money, and that's the reason why I think we have an attorney general's office, is to
Yeah.
investigate this. And that's one of their comments that they said in here, that these findings in the report basically demand, it says these findings are serious enough to report to the Idaho Attorney General's pursuant to Idaho Code section 67702. So they're saying right here in the audit that these are serious enough to report to him, and he was already working on it. But there was, some issues with the judge and his office, I guess, where they were trying to say that there was a conflict of interest of some kind. I'm thinking, how can the attorney general have a conflict of interest when he's actually supposed to be doing his job and taking care of the people's money? And I mean, isn't that his job? I don't, but
Right. Yeah.
maybe I'll learn more about that. But I just don't understand how the judge could say that's a conflict of interest.
Yeah. Okay. So what's the do you know what's the next step now? I mean, is the AG's office reviewing stuff and potential charges, or what where is it at currently?
I don't know. I've reached out to them to see where they're at. I think they're looking into it to see what the next step is. Because the judge did, they were saying that they had to find an attorney that wasn't the AG's office, like an outside attorney, which, again, doesn't make sense. So we're going to hire an attorney at the taxpayer dollars to do something that the attorney general can do.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure what their next steps are going to be. Like I said, I'm really hoping that they're going to continue with this because, the evidence is there. I feel like we're getting a lot of flack. So like Priscilla Giddings would say, we're over the target when you're getting a lot of flack.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and somebody in the comments said, if we don't hold them accountable, then what's the point? And to me, that I mean, it almost kind of goes to the whole Trump issue, in that, when Trump, maybe if you remember in 2016, Trump was like, lock her up, hold Hillary accountable, and then he got in and was like, nah, we're not really going to do that. And that, and if you don't hold people accountable, then it just gets worse,
It
and they
does get
take
worse.
advantage of that, right? And so, um,
And then it just gets bigger and worse. And it's kind of like a little kid when you tell them no, but you don't really mean no. They just the fits get bigger, and until you start giving in to them. And we need to stop giving in to that. And if they don't like the time, don't commit the crime.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
no,
they made a choice. It wasn't a mistake. It was a choice they made.
yeah, yeah. Well, again, I hope that there's some accountability here, but to be quite frank, I just the legal system, I just don't have any faith in it right now until we can see that the other side is actually held accountable for what they do, which looks like a very, very blatant violation, right? Just from what it looks like, again, my opinion. Um, and so, I hope you're right. I hope there's some accountability, because if this gets swept under the rug, like we're just so used to seeing when the establishment does something bad, then it just keeps going, and the persecution on our side gets worse, and their side, they just get away with it. So
Well, and
yeah.
maybe the constituents can say that they really want that, maybe call the AG's office and say, we really want you to pursue this because this is our money and we want it to be accounted for. And maybe they can just call the AG's office to encourage them. And then the other thing that what I'm learning in my first year is we have, I feel like the judicial branch, this is my opinion again, the judicial branch is not staying in their lane. We're
Yeah.
the legislative branch. We're the ones to make the laws. And they're kind of, not staying in their lane. And we have some issues with our judicial branch. And hopefully as legislators, we can maybe come and work on something where we can kind of bump them back over into their
Yeah.
lane. So
Yeah.
that's a hope on mine because I think that's where a lot of our problem is as well.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want to get into this right now, but to your point, when the Idaho Supreme Court just a couple months ago decided that our firearm preemption statute didn't mean anything, right? They basically rewrote the law and took
Yeah,
it out. We were
exactly.
like, what in the world? And that's coming from the highest court on a 5-0 decision. And so it gets worse the lower you get. They just
Yeah.
kind of rewrite the laws, and everybody is legislating from the bench now. Like judges all over the country at the highest levels, everybody's doing it.
And our
And
founding fathers made sure that that didn't happen. That's the reason why they're actually the weakest of the three branches. They're not the ones
yeah,
making the laws, and they made sure that the legislative branch was that branch because we're the closest to the people. And so here we are. We're almost like dogs returning to our vomit. We're back to what our founders came from, and having our executive and judicial branch pretending like they're the strongest branch when it's actually the legislative branch.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're 100% right. 100% right. Well, is there anything else in regard to this or anything else that you would want to say here at the end before we let you go and bring on the Nates about what you're working on?
You know what? I don't have a lot more to say, except for I do want to encourage everybody out there. Um, we're basically getting the government we deserve, because as constituents, as civilian, people, we are the boss, and we're not acting like the boss. I want to encourage you guys to get up, to get involved in some form. We have so many battlefronts out there, from our education, the school boards, city council, whatever it is. If we're not liking what's going on, get out there and get involved, and don't
Yeah.
have excuses that you don't think that you can do it. And I'm a prime example of that. I am a self-employed, homeschooling, stay-at-home mom, and we don't need more lawyers. We don't need, that's where we've gotten here with a lot of lawyers. We're needing more
Yeah.
housewives. We're needing more truck drivers. We're needing more self-employed people in these positions, because we're the boots on the ground and we know what it's like. So don't let them tell you that you can't do it. And I just want to encourage people that if you're feeling led to run, we need you to run, because we can't make any changes unless we can change some of these seats. And so I just really want to leave everybody with that. We can't change the judicial system. We can't fight back against this corruption unless more people join us in the fight.
Yeah, 100%. Okay. And if people want to follow what you're working on with this or with any other work that you're doing, where can they go?
Okay, my website is glenneda.com. The one benefit of having a unique name. So that's GLENNEDA.com. And when you go there, you can actually sign up for my newsletter. I'm working
Okay.
on a new Substack account. I don't have that set up completely yet. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram,
All the places.
all the places.
There's
And I
too
really
many.
do try to make sure that I'm out there in front of the people. I'm going to actually be at the Filer Fair for the Twin Falls County Fair. So if you're at the Filer Fair, come and find my booth, because I really do work hard to make sure that I'm in front of the people, and you can come and ask me questions, and or share ideas, or you
Okay.
know, be mad at me because I voted a certain way, whatever it is. At least we're communicating and I'm in front of you. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I thank you so much. I'm bummed that Dustin wasn't here to help ask some questions as well, but we really appreciate you coming on. I know it's
uh,
late, and yeah,
no
it's
problems.
it's
Thank
been
you for
fun.
inviting me. And it's funny because my sons, I have three. And when I always say, hold up your digits, so you can say you're digit one and he's digit two, because I always say, hold up your digits, boys.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Glenita. Well, thank you so much again. I really appreciate it, and
Thanks,
keep
Greg.
up the good work. You're
All
doing
right. You
awesome.
too. You too.
All
Talk to you.
right. All right, so that was State Representative, or excuse me, State Senator Glenneda Zuiderveld, and I forgot to ask her district. I want to say it's 23 or 8, or I don't know. You'll look it up. We'll look it up later. But I appreciate that. So, real quick, Dominic says Glenneda nails it. We need veto-proof majority in the House and the Senate to get the state back in the hands of the people. Rampant corruption. 100% correct. Before we get to the Nates, please be sure to go to our Rumble channel. Look, the censorship is getting out of control right now. Even on Twitter, it's starting to get worse. I'm not really all that confident that Twitter is going to be what Elon said it was going to be. We'll see, I guess. But Rumble is where we're definitely going to have all of our podcasts and the segments that we do and extra content that we put out. I did a reaction video to some Republican midterm ads on guns. Note to everybody, like 99% of the Republicans who are showing you their pro gun ads are all full of crap. Okay. There's a very small segment that really believe and shall not be infringed. The rest of them are pandering to you. So, and the Democrats, you should never believe anything about them and guns in the first place. So with that, I seriously don't know where Dustin is yet. He was in a meeting, and not sure. Maybe he's too afraid to come on and take on the Nates. I think that's what it is, and so that's okay. That leaves more room for me, and they don't have to cram in nearly as much when I bring them on. So with that, let me bring on Maria and Ron Nate. How are you guys?
Good.
Great.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, Greg.
Yeah, you as well. So thank you for coming on. And I know originally Dustin invited you guys on, and obviously I was totally okay with that, but I don't know if he had specific things in mind other than we're going to talk somewhat about the Main Street Republican Caucus or whatever it's called. So we're going to get into that. But real quick, if you guys can just briefly introduce yourselves, who you are. I didn't know which, and specifically for you, Maria, what you wanted to say in terms
What's my title?
of your title and stuff, because I didn't want to do that. But Ron, you're a former representative, so tell us a little bit about yourselves, and
Okay.
we'll go from there.
Well, I'm Maria Nate, and I am currently the Idaho director of the State Freedom Caucus Network in Idaho, and I'm also the GOP secretary, longtime freedom lover, literally and figuratively, and it's just great to be part of this and to be part of the change that we hope to bring about in Idaho.
Great. And I'm Ron Nate. As you mentioned, I'm a former state representative. I served for 3 terms from District 34. I'm proud of my freedom record. I have a good voting record and a good legislative record of doing pro-freedom things, pro-life things, pro-gun things. I am now a senior policy fellow at the Idaho Freedom Foundation, and tonight I come to you as a very concerned citizen as well, seeing what is going on in our Idaho Department of Health and Welfare.
Yeah, what a mess.
Yeah. So let's get your guys' reaction to that. That wasn't on my plan, but I mean, we brought Glenneda on to talk about that. So what's your guys' reaction? And Ron, she mentioned you in particular. What's your guys' reaction and thoughts on what the independent investigation found?
Well, first of all, proper recognition needs to go to Senator Zuiderveld. She had the courage to bring it forward. A lot of other representatives or senators would be too afraid to take on the agency and therefore take on the governor at the same time. But she had the courage to do it, and she had the goods. She's exactly right on this. And what's really most disturbing to me about this is that this came after the Idaho legislature defeated a bill that was going to appropriate $6 million to some of these early childhood grants. And it was going to do it for 3 years. And so it was going to total $18 million over 3 years.
Jeez.
But the reason why the legislature voted it down is because it was tied to the National Youth Education Program, which was putting wokeness into kids' hands at such an early age. Had the sketchy books, the sketchy programming, the sexualized agenda, all of that was there. Legislature said no way. But some members at Health and Welfare decided to take it into their own hands and say, you know what? Beth Oppenheimer, I know you were crushed by the defeat of that bill, but we're going to make sure you get some money from these community care grants. And the emails and the evidence in this report, they went around the law, they over appropriated in some areas, and they appropriated money that should have never gone to these areas because the legislature said no.
It's disgusting. And it's disgusting that the media has not picked up on this and that they just don't see there. And it's to their narrative and what they want, and they're on their team. And so this just is a media blackout on this huge issue. And you got to think, like she said, if it's happening with this, it's happening more and more and more. They just disregard intent language and they just do what they want. It's disgusting.
And as far as I'll add this, that the buck should stop with the leader. You look in that report, and on page 34, Director Jepson says, well, we looked at the appropriation and it said 36 million. We thought that was a minimum. This director either doesn't understand what a budget is or does and willfully allowed his agency to violate that law. Either he's in control and he knows they're doing wrong, he's out of control as a director. He should be fired or forced to resign. If the governor is going to hold them accountable, he needs to make it happen here, because Health and Welfare runs the most state money through its organization, through its agency of any other agency. It's the biggest dollar agency in the state. And if we have incompetency or illegalities there, it should end. Accountability should go all the way up to Governor Little. Make him resign or fire him.
What do you think the odds of that are, especially given that, you know, Little and Labrador aren't exactly friends, and kind of come from polar opposite sides of the Republican Party, so to speak? And, you know, is Little going to fire the guy that I don't even know if he appointed him. Maybe that was beforehand. But, you know, do you guys anticipate that Little's going to do anything, or do you think they're going to mount a defense of the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare and try to come out and say that the report is biased because Labrador, blah, blah, blah? You know, what are you expecting?
I think they'll just double down. I mean, based on that, you can go look at it on page 34. You can look at what their defense is. They're claiming that they're fine and everything they did is fine. So they see no culpability in this. They're going to go ahead and keep doing what they're doing until they're stopped. So people need to understand that Idaho is equally as corrupt as DC. And just because it's happening in Idaho and you think this is a clean conservative state, it's not. The deep state is real here. Cronyism is real here. And this is bad news. This is, I'm sure, just the tip of the iceberg about what's really happening there.
And I'll throw in that the governor has not demonstrated a record of courage in dealing with issues like this. So I don't expect him to do anything, although I'm calling on him to do it.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't do it, that's why we have checks and balances in our three branches of government. The Attorney General's office should look at this. And if there's judicial matters that need to come forward to handle this, fine. If not, the legislative branch is also a check on the executive. It should be reflected in every JFAC hearing regarding health and welfare and every bit of legislation. Maybe they need to do a resolution or a move themselves to handle the issue, but something needs to happen. Millions of taxpayer dollars were misappropriated against the will of the representatives of the people. And if nobody's held accountable, we get what we deserve.
Yeah, you talk about leadership. He's not a leader in anything. He's too busy taking pictures with freaking stuffed potatoes on an old couch. He doesn't have time for accountability and leading. That's been my long criticism of Little, is that he never leads on anything. Like, there isn't one issue where he's kind of the first governor out the gate saying, let's do this. Yeah. And his predecessor wasn't any better, right? Our state has a problem of not leading on issues. We wait for like 6 or 7 other states to do something. Then we're kind of like, okay, maybe we can go ahead and do that now. And that's extremely frustrating.
Yep. COVID case in point.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. So, Maria, in your introduction, you left something out that I think was really important. I follow you on Twitter, and you were on a mission on Twitter to destroy pedophiles and drag queen crap and all that stuff. That's a very important part of your persona that I feel like you left out in your introduction.
Yeah. I have amassed quite a following of trolls. And just before this, I was arguing with one of the biggest ones who cannot define what a woman is. No matter how many times I ask him, he cannot define what a woman is. It's a very simple question. And when you catch them in this, they can't defend themselves. They're really actually pathetic little souls. And history is not going to be kind to them. I always say, be coming up with excuses right now why you supported the transgender cult. Because history is going to bear out the truth of this. This is a cult, and these kids are being brainwashed, and we need to stand up and support them.
Absolutely. I'll back that up. Corrupting children through drag queen story hours, or drag queen events, through transgender surgery before they have of the age to consent to anything, even other minor things like tattoos or smoking. We're saying that they can mutilate their bodies. It's outrageous. I forgot to mention I'm the county director of mass resistance in Madison County. Yeah. We're fighting drag queen shows across eastern Idaho where kids are present. It's just not appropriate. It's adult entertainment. We're working on legislation for this session.
Yeah, this seems to be, and we're going to get to the Main Street Idaho Republican Caucus or whatever it is here in a minute. But this, I've said quite a bit that our country is not unified on anything anymore, right? There's no compromise with these people. There's a lot of evil happening. The gap between both sides is getting wider and wider and wider. And it seems like there's almost nothing left that we can agree on when one side is like cut off little kids' genitals and child porn is okay. Now they're trying to normalize pedophilia. But it does seem like this issue in particular, though, we've seemed to have found a bridge with a number of Democrats and people from maybe the lesbian and gay community who are like, okay, this is like, this thing is so out of control. We want nothing to do with these crazy people. A lot of Democrats are coming out in favor of stopping this stuff. It's just a far radical left that seems to be really pushing it hard.
Well, Greg, I will say that we have some in the Idaho Senate who voted for gender mutilation. Some in the House,
Republicans,
Matt Bundy. Let's just call it what it is. How in the world can you defend cutting off healthy body parts of children? It's disgusting.
Or drugging
Children
them.
cannot consent to puberty blockers. So I'm looking at you, members of the Main Street Caucus. Those of you that voted to mutilate children, that's not very Main Street of you, is it?
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, so I'm the gun guy, right? I've been doing the gun stuff for a long time. And when we were passing constitutional carry, their argument was, especially when we were lowering the age limit down to 18, well, their brains aren't fully developed. They probably shouldn't carry a gun until they're 25 years old. And now we're like, 6 years old, you want to cut off your breast? Go ahead, knock yourself out. You want to take drugs? I'm like, what is happening here? This doesn't make any sense at all.
When you have no principles, you have to make up stories along the way. And so the mainly squishy caucus, I call it, is full of contradictions. They're Marxist in their view of government. They always want bigger government. They want central planning. They want socialism. They say they're conservative, but their answer to everything is almost always a government answer, where they're adding a regulation, funneling more money through government, and saying it's a higher skill set for us to run things through government. And that's Dave Lent in the mainly squishy caucus, saying that because he has this higher skill set, he knows better how to run education in Idaho.
He can government better than you. Just more government. But because I'm the one doing the government, it's going to be okay. Don't you worry. It's just so arrogant.
Yeah. Okay. Well, with that introduction into the Main Street Squishy Caucus,
mainly squishy, Middle Street Caucus. You want to call that middle of the road? But middle of the road is in Idaho's left of the road. They're just
Well, I actually have two clips. We're going to do one, and then the second clip will kind of go more to what you're saying. But this was a reel they had posted on Facebook and cut up with Representative Stephanie Mickelson. So I wanted to play this real quick and show you.
Make investments in this state with our tax dollars that will pay dividends in future generations and in future years.
Politicians love to say Idaho's greatest resource are our youth, but the problem is all we've done is export that resource.
Anytime we can invest in future generations, and if they'll make their contribution, it's a win-win for everybody.
You sound like a Republican. Teach a man to fish. Don't give him the fish, right?
Our local school districts, their property tax goes to pay for their buildings and for any excess above what the state gives them. So if you have a district that needs to eventually build a building, if they don't have any bonds or levies out there that relate to buildings, they can actually bank this money and then use it for buildings in the future.
This was a big issue in the session. As Idahoans, we should be concerned that, billionaires out of Silicon Valley are pouring money into our state, trying to get their views pressed into our legislature. Do you see water issues coming up in the next session?
You're talking about shutting down 900,000 acres of irrigated farm ground when we have food shortages across this country. Currently, there's no incentive in the first in time, first in right priority system. We need to come together and figure out a solution.
Okay, so
What in the H was that?
so yeah,
Did they have to chop it all up? So
it was really
like,
choppy, and I think they could have probably done a lot better. But there was two things in there that I thought were, I would say interesting. Maybe that's not the right word. The first one was, you sound like a Republican. Okay, if you have to say that, that's not good.
it's like subliminal messaging.
Right.
You sound and you know what? They sprinkle that throughout all of their little podcast.
Oh my gosh.
You're such a fiscal conservative. You're so conservative.
Well, I'll tell you what, two things jumped out at me. When you have to say we have to invest in education or invest in the infrastructure, that is the language of the left.
Yep.
They are always putting more government dollars to something and calling it investment, when really much of it is waste of taxpayer dollars. The second one, billionaire dollars come from Silicon Valley coming into Idaho. Well, wasn't that the Meta Center that the Republicans, mainly squishy caucus, all voted for, including my opponent, Britt Raybould, said, oh, yeah, we need this. They're taking up water. They're taking up water, and she's supposed to be the queen of water. Yeah. This mainly squishy caucus talks out of both sides of their head all the time.
Yeah.
We're a little fired up.
Yeah. No, that's good. Well, to that point, me and Dustin are just like, oh my gosh, how is anybody going to be able to stay awake? Even their stinger, right? At the very end there, I mean, it was like if you were going to bed and you were going to fall asleep to their stinger. It's nothing compared to Dustin and I's stinger, which is fantastically way over the top and rocking out. It's awesome. But
that makes sense because they're the squishy caucus. They stand for nothing. They fall for everything. And really, Greg, we just need to learn how to disagree better. Well, you know what? When you're coming for my kids and you want to cut off their healthy body parts, we're not going to disagree very well here.
Yeah. Well, and I was actually going to cut a clip because in the segment that Treg Burnt and Josh Wheeler did, they talked about how disagree better, and that's been a real big theme of not just the squishy caucus, but all of them, right? Pushing that. And then the funny thing is, they'll go and share like Mary Souza just ripping people apart, right? And Daniel Silver and all these other people who are constantly attacking. Ron, you've been in the inside, and you know as well as I do, it's all a bunch of bullcrap. They're all a bunch of hypocrites.
Yep.
Because once you get inside there, it's not like they're coming to you all the time and trying to work together, right? These people want to destroy you, and there's no compassion, there's no working together, none of that. That's all bullcrap.
No, they in their high skill set of being able to sit down together, roll up your sleeves, and talk with one another. The highest level of recalcitrance I've seen in the legislature, in other words, the inability to compromise, comes when you're sitting in a committee chair's office and he doesn't like your bill. No matter what compromise you offer, the answer is no. They talk about the Liberty legislators voting no. It is the committee chairs who are the gatekeepers and say no more often than anyone else I've ever seen there. And they are unwilling to compromise. Dave Lent is a big no committee chair. Some of the worst ones in Patty Ann Lodge, Tom Lurcher, they would just say no to every reasonable bill brought before them because it was a freedom bill and it wasn't rubber stamped by either the governor or legislative leadership. And so while they talk about compromise and talk about the spirit of sitting down together and talking behind closed doors, they are the biggest, I'll say it, butt heads that you run into in the legislature.
Late. This is after hours.
Okay.
Oh, we're getting the feisty Ron. I like it.
Ron's like Ron Unleashed.
Well, and I just keep using this example, but what they did to Christy Zitto with the gun bill was atrocious, right? And they talk about integrity and working together and all this stuff, but then she had an idea and was running a bill, and they went and stole the bill and then left her off of it, right? These are the people who want to quote unquote disagree better. And it makes me sick because it's going to work with a lot of people, right? Now, I don't know Spencer Cox, Governor Cox of Utah, who's started this stupid movement.
Mr. Pronouns?
Yeah. So I don't really know him or follow his politics, but they're all jumping on the bandwagon, and they're going to go out and they're going to run campaign ads and disagree better. Let's be kind to each other.
It's garbage.
And all this, it's garbage.
Look, what they're trying to do is fundamentally change Idaho. They are changing the structure of Idaho, and they're doing it. It's the iron fist and the velvet glove. So they're stroking you with their lovely, while they're sticking the shiv in your kidney. So, people need to sort of wake up. These are not colleagues over in the Capitol. This is political warfare. They're coming for your children. They're coming for your tax dollars. They don't care about morality issues. Dave Lent as much said that. They want to spend up all your tax dollars. They think they're the only ones that know how to manage your money. The way they talk about revenue, you need to get into that.
Point. She's exactly right. Dave Lent said too much attention's being paid on the social issues. We need to focus on the fiscal issues. And he talks about $300 million of excess revenues returned to the taxpayer. What he didn't say is over the last 4 or 5 years, we've been running $1.4 billion to $2 billion surpluses. And returning some of the tax money, $300 million, is his gesture of being fiscally conservative. No, we have a structural surplus that needs to end by reducing taxes and not taking it from taxpayers in the first place. I would never call it revenues when I was in the legislature, because that implies the government did something to earn it.
Right.
It's tax collections because it's taken by force. And they have a stewardship to make sure they don't take too much and that they don't waste it. We're in a period of waste right now, and it's illegal waste, and it should be handled when I'm talking about DHW. And David Lent should be a gatekeeper on this. All he wants to do is spend it up.
Did Dave Lent vote for the launch program?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I assumed he did. I honestly didn't know, but my assumption was that he did. So yeah.
And in his hour-long podcast, the only thing I heard him talk about specifically with education policy was we needed to pass the bill to train school board members, because if we gave superintendents and school board members the freedom they need and we trained them up, we'd have better results.
Train them up in some more Marxist principles.
Yeah, who's going to train
more
them?
Marxism? Where did they get this freaking?
He wants to
training
spend
from?
$1.5 million a year to train school board members to be better Marxists. That's
Right.
not going to fix Idaho's education.
I want to remind everyone too that the Freedom Caucus did not vote for the launch. They were some of the strongest voices against it, which is corporate cronyism. I mean, we need to just start calling this what it is, this public-private partnerships. This is the definition of fascism, when you have the government and you have businesses coming together and then they're pushing their will onto you. COVID vaccines, masking. This is a slippery slope that we're on. And I don't really know what to do to wake up people except what we're doing right now, which is just trying to shake them.
Yeah, and I try and point out the conflict of interest, the cronyism that's going on, pointing out Micron and Boise Cascade and these other companies that are going to get money from Idaho Launch, that have been big donors to the Little campaign. And that committee chair pulls me from the podium, sixth the security on me. It was an amazing display of anti-democracy right there. That you say something that's slightly offensive that touches the deep state a little bit, and the deep state wants to take you away.
So that kind of sounds opposite here. Let me run this clip of Senator Burnt. I think it's like 14 seconds.
Why do you do this?
I know. Sorry. Get your duct tape out, wrap it around your head so it doesn't explode. Let's roll this.
The Big Ten Republican approach, very much needed in this state. And it's okay to be different. It's okay to have different perspectives. But at the end of the day, we're all conservative Republicans. Again, a Kootenai County Republican maybe is a little bit different than a Bandit County Republican. But at the end of the day, we're all playing for the same team, and I think that's what's most important.
Yeah.
That's just bullshit.
Take a breath, Maria. Take a breath.
Yeah, Big Tent Republicans. Every
circus tent.
Every non-conservative Republican calls themselves a conservative Republican, and the telltale sign is when they say common sense conservative. That tells you they're willing to spend up all your money. My common sense conservative opponent voted for every single budget increase. Didn't vote against a single one of them. And it's amazing how Big Tent means they want the tent to enclose them too, but they're outside the mainstream Republican platform. They are outside it.
It is not conservative to vote to cut off.
You said it all, Maria. You don't even need to talk anymore.
I'm sorry.
It's unleashed.
I can't take it anymore. You know, we try so hard to just be all, you know.
Can't we all just get along?
Good. But you know what? that just isn't, that's not working.
So here's I want to talk about this, and I'm going to throw this at you, Ron. So if you remember, I started back in 2012. My first session was 2013. And I think you came on in 2014 or
2015 was
15,
my
right?
first session.
15, I think. You know, it's interesting because I remember when you first got into office, and it's almost like everybody that first gets in there, you're kind of like, well, let me try to see if I can navigate the waters and do all this stuff. And I just said, okay, you go ahead and try it that way, Ron. And you know, to see now how you're like burn the whole place down, just like these are evil, awful, terrible people. And to, you know, in Treg's video talking about, oh, big tent this and big tent that. Again, there's a war going on right now between good and evil, right? Not just between conservatives and these fake Republicans, but as you know now, like it's a real war between good and evil, and you're not inside their tent. Let's not pretend like they care about you. Let's not pretend like they care about conservatives. They're going to try and take you out in the election. If we were all on the same team, and every Republican, like he said, was a conservative, then there would be no primary, right? Everybody,
right.
You just wait until somebody died or they retired, and then you'd run the next person, because the truth is it's not that way. I don't want a big tent. I don't want a bunch of flaming liberal Republicans in the Republican Party. I want people who, like you said, would uphold that platform.
Right.
It is a battle for good and evil, and there are those who are willingly doing evil, who know to lie, and there's unwitting participants who think that they're doing the right thing all the time.
They're
But
just dupes.
these people who say we want a big tent, we want to work together, they're the first ones to call the Liberty folks extremists. They're the first
Right.
ones to say, Dave
All
Lenn
right.
said, they just stomp their feet and say no. Well, they say no to your big Marxist agenda. They absolutely say no to
right.
that. And it's not, it's not being obstinate to vote no against Marxism. It's being reasonable. It's being protective of Idaho citizens and Idaho kids.
And children. Treg Burt voted to cut off healthy genitals from children. He voted that was okay. He voted, is that the tent? Is that the big kind of tent we want to have? Where we can just have whatever porn we want in the libraries? This stuff matters because it's the rising generation. The Marxists are patient, they plant, and it's now bearing fruit. And this is a spiritual battle fought in a political realm. And people need to enlist in God's army and fight back to take our country.
Yeah. Have you guys both watched the Rocky Mountain Heist? I assume you have.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. We see it happening in Idaho
Yeah.
too. Big money is coming in to defeat good conservatives for the sake of these blue Republicans.
Yeah. And you guys know, I mean, I think I might have been one of the first ones that started talking about that a really long time ago, saying it's happening, right? And then all of a sudden, Reclaim Idaho popped up and Moms Demand Action mobilized. And now, I mean, look at how much, Ron, compared to your first run for office, how much it costs now to run for office in almost any of the districts, especially where there's a good conservative versus a rhino. I mean, we're outrageous amounts of money. And if you remember from the Rocky Mountain Heist, and if you guys at home haven't seen that, I think it's on Rumble for free. I think you can go watch it. It's called the Rocky Mountain Heist. It's about how Colorado, in a matter of 10 years, had a Republican governor, 2 Republican U.S. senators. Most of their congressmen were Republicans. Their state legislature was both chambers were Republican. And in 10 years, like you said, Ron, a bunch of money got dumped into the state. They've changed the laws. They flipped judges. They flipped everything. They started spending massive amounts of money. And some of the former lawmakers in that video will say, all of a sudden, we're spending, $50,000 in a campaign for what was normally it used to be about $15,000. That was
I'll give you numbers. My first campaign, I spent $11,000. My opponent spent $16,000, and I won by 500 votes. In this last election that I spent $46,000, more than I'd ever raised. My opponent spent $180,000, and there was other outside money to the tune of close to $200,000 dumped in for her support. Now, that is outrageous money. But if you look at the ROI on that, when they get CARES money, ARPA money, and all that money coming in, it means hundreds of millions of dollars, even billions of dollars for those special interests dumping money in the campaigns.
Yep.
Yeah, they're willing to spend six figures and close to $500,000 on a little house race because they get hundreds of millions of dollars in return for it. And you see it in the budgets. They vote for it. It's Marxism. It's political cronyism.
It is, and it's bought and paid for. And I think we just need to be calling it what it is. IACI is the absolute most powerful lobby group in the state. They're running the state. They're running the legislature. It's their agenda that gets passed. It's their people that get their pockets padded. And there's people that are fighting against it. But then you have the Main Street Caucus who's just like, can't we all just get along? No, I'm not going to give you all my money.
They stand on the floor and say, hey, this is an IACI approved bill.
Yes.
Gag me with a spoon.
Kevin Cook said that in one of the debates. IACI is for this. And I'm like, who's running the show here, buddy? And that's good. You're part of the Main Street Caucus too, and you can listen to his podcast and fall right to sleep. I mean, guys, wake up! They're taking our state. Are you gonna let them?
Yeah. What would you say to those who would argue that, well, isn't the Idaho Freedom Foundation doing the same thing for our side, and they're telling you how to vote, Ron, and you just do what the IFF says? Is that how it works?
IFF is a grassroots organization. None of their positions are influenced by any kind of money coming in. There's no money going back to any corporation or anything like that, like IACI promises their donors. And so IACI is the epitome of the conglomerate of the special interest, where they get millions of dollars to accomplish the legislative goals that brings back tens of millions of dollars to their donors.
You can trace that back.
All our donors get back is freedom.
Right, freedom. That's it. And that's what we're all about here. Is we're about freedom. IACI is about the bottom line. And when there's a big bill going on, when you see King IACI hanging out in the lobby. I have seen so much. I now have to be a registered lobbyist. I hang out. I have seen so much. You should hear the way the lobbyists talk about the legislators.
The safe is the lobby office.
Yeah, the safe is the lobby office. And you have to have a green tag to get in there.
I don't ever go in there, so I have to register too, and I hate it. But I don't ever go. I've been in the safe like twice since I started. I don't want to go in there. I have to go take a shower even after I leave the Capitol. So if you go in the safe, I mean, you're probably detoxing and bleach and everything else to get clean after being.
It's a Silkwood scrub down afterwards.
Well,
absolutely.
They didn't know who I was, so for a long time I just heard a lot of stuff. And I'm telling you,
interesting.
The massive amount of disrespect that these lobbyists have for legislators, it's shocking. They are running them like cattle. That's how they view the legislators, is cattle, to steer into wherever the trough is. And I think that we just got to start calling it what it is. It's time to speak the truth and to be bold. And we've got to we are never going to be able to outspend them. So we have to outvote them every time. You've got to contribute it to the causes that you care about. We cannot just tweet and Facebook and meme our ways out of this.
Yeah. Well,
door to door, get the Liberty folks reelected and get new ones elected too.
Right.
Yeah, we don't have a giant propaganda machine behind us either. So
no.
There is, and honestly, that was one of the reasons me and Dustin want to do this podcast, was to give, folks like you guys and lawmakers and other candidates and other conservative activists somewhere where we can all kind of come and talk about, some of the issues that are happening. One of the biggest issues, and maybe you guys have an answer for this because I haven't been able to figure it out. One of the biggest reasons that, and if you have to go, please let me know. I can go on all night. But
kids at home.
Yeah. One of the biggest problems, if you talk to people who came from California, Oregon, Colorado, Washington, all these states that have fallen to this progressive disease, is apathy. They will tell you, we didn't see it coming. We didn't think it could happen here. We just weren't really paying attention. And I don't know about you guys, but that same problem is happening here. And quite frankly, it's the native Idahoans who often are the most apathetic because they have that same mentality that all these political refugees had when they were in their own states. I don't know how you wake these people up. Like, I seriously don't. It's with everything going on federally and everything going on in our state. How do we not just get people out to help get good people elected, but how do we get them to even just start caring about the issues other than the transgender mutilation thing? That seems to have ignited a lot of people. But other than that, you start talking about budgets and all that crap and nobody cares, right? They're like, oh, the launch program. Yeah, whatever. No big deal.
Well, that they count on that, and we have an affinity vote here where I'm going to vote for the good person. I sit in the pew with him, so he's got to be good. And they that's what they do, and they don't look anything past. They trust everything that they hear out of their mouths when they go to report back to their central committees. Quite frankly, most of these politicians are flat out lying about their voting record. They won't tell the ugly truth about it. Kevin Cook talks about saving, like $100,000 to do enterprise software licenses. So that somehow makes him a fiscal conservative when he's voted for every single budget. And we've had the largest increase in our Idaho state budget. And these guys are just like drunken sailors. So it's too much.
Well, that's an insult to drunken sailors. I've seen more fiscally conservative drunken sailors out there. These guys are over the top, and they come home and talk like conservatives. It is flat out lying, and I have no patience for the lying. The director of health and welfare saying, "Oh, we thought that was a minimum level of spending." What a lie! And I've had it with it. The first person to lie to me in the legislature was a fellow Christian.
Yeah.
And I knew it was a lie when he said it because I had learned the truth 10 minutes earlier, and he came and told me a lie to get my vote. And they do this all the time. And what's more frustrating, I don't care. You can lie to me. I can find out the truth. But when they go home and they lie to the constituents and the voters of Idaho and tell them that they are something they're not, and that what they are doing is something that they're not doing, it's offensive to me.
It is.
And you can never really know until you get in there and you see what kind of things they say to you behind closed doors and in a committee when you know what else they've been doing. And it is not all pure. It's not puppies and kittens there. It is a demon's world. And you have to fight against it, and you always have to guard against becoming the monster that you're fighting. And there are monsters there. Yeah,
it's an absolute bloodbath. So real quick, Freedom Bro number 2 finally decided to show his butt up. So we're gonna bring on.
Bring him on.
Yeah, we're gonna bring Dustin on, and then we'll have to just briefly see if we need to adjust you guys. So
there he is. We could get really close.
You might have. Get snuggle up. Yep. It's getting feisty in here, Dustin. You've missed a great show, man.
You're gonna have to bleep me.
What's up, bruh?
So did we cover the whole like Main Street podcast is right wing or mainstream propaganda? Like, have we covered that yet?
We call it mainly Squishy Caucus.
Yeah, we're calling them all out by name at this point, Dustin.
Now, I listened to a couple episodes. Did Treg ever talk about his vote for the transgender surgery bill? Was that something? Because that's Main Street, right?
We covered it. We covered that. Yeah.
Oh, good. Because I'm sure that's something that Main Street Idahoans want is transgender mutilation surgeries. Their daughters cutting their breasts off. I'm sure that's what Idahoans want.
Yeah.
Treg, come on, bro.
Hey, it's part of that Big Tent.
Yeah, I think he referred to it on the floor, something about parents' rights or something like that. But then at the same time, can't support school choice.
Did we also mention the whole like Biden-style paying for college program that was the mainstay of the headliner of their podcast?
Yeah.
Okay, you guys got it. I don't even need to be here. I'm going to go back to my fudge rounds.
Yeah. Let's remember on that a majority of Republicans voted against that. It was the minority of the Main Street Squishy Caucus with the Democrats who got it passed.
Yeah.
And so it's a liberal bill passed by one vote in the House.
Can I tell
I'm curious. Back like 5 or 6 years ago, Scott Bedke, when he was speaker, he had a rule called the Bedke rule, which was modeled after, I think it was the Hastert rule, which was you have to have a Republican majority on an agreement on a proposal to let it go forward on the floor. Whatever happened to that? Because it seems like the establishment and the leftists, like the hardcore leftists and the socialistly awkward leftists, are working together hand in hand to get their Biden-style programs through. What happened to the Bedke rule?
Well, it worked until there were enough liberty legislators to make the short bus be big enough to overpower the long bus, as he called it. And so suddenly they had to team with Democrats to get their liberal policies through. And so that was thrown out the window. And I credit the districts that elected good liberty legislators. And we need to do more of that. Liberty harder. We can make it happen.
Liberty harder. There's your next bumper sticker, I think. The interesting thing, and you guys probably touched this. I am so sorry I'm coming in late. I had football league meetings. I'm so sorry. But the interesting thing that
I thought you were
noticed,
working. This is football crap. Oh,
I'm a team owner now, so I had to I have more responsibilities, weirdly enough. I don't know why anybody trusts me with this, but everybody in Stephanie Mickelson's podcast, every one of them mentioned that, like you guys mentioned it to me, Greg, Maria, Dom, whatever his name is over here in Western Idaho. That sounds like something a Republican would say. It's like they have to reinforce like what they're not to convince voters, right?
Yeah, they have to tell them over and over again, you're so fiscally conservative. And I'm conservative roots. And Dave Lent, who is like, we took 4 pages of notes from his podcast because it was so offensive the way he talks about things, the way he talks about your taxpayer dollars, how we have to incentivize government. What in the actual hell does that mean? Incentivize government?
I don't.
No.
He admits education is running like a Model A and says that we can't go for school choice because there's no accountability. I ask you, where is the public school accountability?
Yeah.
There's absolutely none.
It's interesting.
You give them more money. They do.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry.
Henry Ford, I saw a quote today somewhere on social media. I think it was LinkedIn. I've become super cool on LinkedIn because I'm important now. And I'm that guy. But Henry Ford said, if I asked people what they want, they would have given me, or they would have asked for faster horses, right? And I think that's the mentality that Dave Lent has, which is, what do the people want? They want, he's not seeing what could be. Like, we could have some really cool school options. Kids, like my kids, do all this really cool crap that I pay for it, and then I get to pay for public schools. But like, why is it, Ron and Maria, why are people so stuck on the public school, government school model that we have right now? Any ideas?
I'll go.
You go.
Bastiat calls it what is seen and what is not seen. What we see is public education, and they say they're constantly underfunded, but we give them more funding and we get more of the same. We get tests going down over the 5 to 7 years. And it's not improving anything. But what is not seen is what could happen when you introduce a modicum of competition and the amount of improvement that could happen. It will help the private schools. It will help the public schools to do better. Imagine if our food, if fast food was run by government. Imagine the kind of choices you would have and the weight you would have. Imagine DMV.
I mean, I don't have to imagine that part. I'm kind of fat already.
But we don't have to imagine the counter. We don't have to imagine what competition would look like, because that's what we enjoy. We get food fast. We get it the way we want it. We can have healthy options. We can have unhealthy options.
That's what I'm talking about.
We can have fast, high quality options, local. We have all sorts of choices. I trust parents to choose the best for their kids.
I'm going to ask the question that everybody watching this podcast right now is thinking of, and I've been thinking about it all day, the seen and the unseen, and imagining what could be. Ron, are you going to run for governor in 2026?
No.
I have no plans on running for governor.
Oh, you're killing me.
No, we have plenty of other good options.
Maria's going to run. Okay, cool.
No.
That's great.
Look, I am the trouble in this relationship. Ron, creates all the problems. So there's no way on earth. But I think we'll have some really good choices in 24, whenever the next election is. But look, let's just try to get through. We got to get through the next primary. We got to get our Liberty people back because they are coming for them.
Yeah.
Coming.
Let me ask you this: you guys pay attention to politics just like we do. You're just as in the know and in the swing of things. I guess I'm very tired right now. Who's the number one target for the establishment in the left, which is actually one and the same at this point? Who's the number one target that they want to take out?
I don't like to say. I don't want to manifest it.
Okay, then don't. I guess.
That it's all the Liberty people.
Just look at anyone who has a score above 90. Because those are the ones who are exposing the liberalness of the mainly squishy caucus. Because everyone who votes for freedom and votes down an excessive budget exposes those big spenders and those Marxists that are in the House and Senate.
Yeah. And
I have a theory, and I want your takes on this. And we're way over time, but I'm totally cool going until Greg's bedtime. I know
We're getting there.
I know he gets a little sleepy. I can see it in his eyes. I have a theory that the establishment is 2 elections away from the grave if conservatives do what they need to do over the next 2 elections. I think that the reason I say this is Raul Labrador, as popular as he was, won the chairmanship for the GOP a couple years ago, like 6, 7 years ago, whatever, by like 2 votes, right? 2 votes. Dorothy Moon won by 141 votes, right?
Yeah.
I think their time is up and they know it, and they're going to get way more acidic and way more rhetorically violent and way more aggressive in their as they go down with the sinking ship. Do you guys feel the same way?
I'm much more pessimistic. Sorry.
That's fine. That's why I asked.
Ron's more the optimistic. This is why it works well. I'm always like, yeah, the world's gonna end tomorrow and that's it. But he sees things more optimistically, right?
Oh, I've seen the power that can happen with 7 good conservatives in a House, or 8 good conservatives in a Senate. Imagine if you had 15. Right. And you don't have to have a super majority to have a strong impact. Yeah, and so you're 1 or 2 good primaries away from having such a significant impact that it will leave the Marxists nowhere to hide.
Yeah, that's a really good point, that you can do quite a bit with. I mean, you can do more with the majority, but it's going to be solid. And that is one of the freedom gives people a voice where they can be loud. So it's important that we need to bring them all back, and we need to increase our numbers, because if not, we are going the way we're like 10 years away from California,
right.
Idaho is, and we're 30 years away from the UK, which is insane. So it's happening.
Yeah. I will say this, and then I'll leave it alone. Let Greg run the rest of the show before he falls asleep. But I'm very optimistic about this. I think conservatives are more organized than they've ever been. People like Josh Gibbons, Brent Regan, Dominic, whatever his name is. I can't remember his last name.
Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon. That's why conservatives are way more organized than they've ever been. And the best thing was the Senate. Yes, John Haida. Oh, I love John Haida.
Yeah.
They are way more organized than they've ever been. And the Senate takeover of this last primary was fantastic. And leadership had no idea what to do, because their pool of acolytes and minions was so small that they had to they're like, oh crap, well, I guess we have to put the conservatives on one committee. We took over Senate Education Committee and stopped some really bad stuff. And there was some good stuff that got killed or whatever. But like, we're almost there. And I hope conservatives understand, like, if we continue to fight, support people like Glenneda and Brian Lenny, Scott Herndon. If some of those squishy people, stop being squishy, like, we're so freaking close. I will get off my soapbox now, but thank you for your opinion.
I'm with you. I'm converted, Dustin. We can do this. We got to do this.
I guess I'm probably more of the pessimist. I guess I'm with Maria to some extent, or I was, until she just flip-flopped on me. But I'm probably more with Maria to some extent, because I don't know. It seems like there's so much horrible stuff happening, right, across the country, across the world. Politically, you just kind of go, I don't know, God, at what point do we finally get some victories here? And we had the House firewall, right? You're talking about being excited about what's happening in the Senate. Well, everybody said the same thing about the House firewall. And I can see from Ron's perspective, like Ron was a fantastic legislator and ended up losing to a total squish. If we're going to stick with that word.
She's not even a squish. She's a
so, yeah, I mean, so I guess I'm just kind of like, I hope you're right. I hope I'm wrong. I hope you're right. And in 2 election cycles, they've been decimated completely. And all the people, the liberals, have just moved out of the state because, we need to do the opposite, right? California caused a whole bunch of political refugees to come here. Well, let's cause our own wave of political refugees leaving the state and going to California, because that would be fantastic.
How about this? I will bet you a box of fudge rounds I'm right.
Okay.
All right, I'm on. I'm down with that.
Yeah, you're in.
Because
Okay,
honestly,
I got to say one thing, Dustin and Freedom Bros.
Yeah.
If ranked choice voting state, you can kiss all of this goodbye. And you know, that is probably why they're so freaked out that they know they're in trouble. So they know that this is the only way they can get their little moderate liberals in, is through ranked choice voting. So that's
what's key here. That's a really good point, Maria. You're exactly right. And you know what's key here? Brad Little needs to keep his trap shut, because the last 2 times that Governor Mayville put something up, Governor Otter ended up endorsing Medicaid expansion, and then Brad Little stole Governor Mayville's idea and did it anyway. Yeah, he stripped out the tax hike, but then we got more money for government schools, which are indoctrinating the hell out of kids. So Brad Little, if any of your people are watching, do not follow Governor Mayville's lead. Don't endorse his idea. Don't.
Oh,
We've got bigger problems, Governor. Promises in health and welfare. Fire that guy.
Yeah. Let's.
No, you're right, Maria. And we've talked about this on the podcast. I want to say last week that this is it. The ranked choice voting, the open primary crap. That's the end of our state. Like, we won't come back. That would be the end, 100%.
And they know it. But I do think we have an opportunity here. But again, people have got to get off their couch. You've got to fund what you find important, and you've got to vote, and you've got to get off your couch and knock doors. You cannot. Facebook is throttling everything. Twitter is. Look, most of us are not. Twitter's a cesspool. I'm on it, but my conservative friends are not on it, and it's not a real.
I mean, we're friends.
Sort of.
Whoa. But I want to add something that Greg and I have been big on for a long time. And like, I kind of violated my own rule with the Twitter tirade I went on last night. Stop caring about Washington, D.C. Stop it. No one cares. No one's going, no progress is going to be made there. Your opinion, and this is something I still need to learn, your opinion about Donald Trump, Joe Biden, doesn't matter. But we saw good conservatives win or lose by 36, 35, 7 votes in the last election. Your vote, your voice in this next election can literally determine the Senate GOP caucus makeup and who holds the gavel in the Senate. Like, the stakes are that high.
Yeah, the battle's in the state, baby. The battle is in the states. That's what saved this country, not the federal government.
And here's the thing: I don't actually think this country is to be saved. If I'm going to be put on my tinfoil hat, I think there's going to be a national divorce, and Idaho's going to come out looking pretty good if we do our job. Oh, did I just say that? Maybe I shouldn't have said that.
Fudge rounds on that.
It's yes. Okay. 2 boxes of fudge rounds. I don't know when we collect, but we'll figure that out.
It's fun when we're all in the gulag together.
Or Galt's Gulch.
Yeah.
I was going to say, who's John Gall? Let's go.
Yes. I'm here for that. So.
Oh gosh.
All right, I'm off.
Do you guys have anything else you want to say? I mean, you've kind of made a final pitch there, Maria, but for your own organizations that you guys are a part of, or anything else, what would your pitch to the Idaho people be for the next 6 months, 7 months before we get ready for another primary?
I think I've said it over and over again. People are going to have to engage in this election like they never have before to overcome all of the special interest establishment money. They're already telegraphing what their plan is for the primary. We already know what they're going to say. We already know how they're going to paint everyone. but they're
Yeah.
going to do it kindly, so therefore it's okay. They'll lie about it kindly.
With civility. It's civility.
Yeah.
Ron?
I'll just throw in that it is a battle for good, between good and evil. The battle is real. It's not fought with guns here now. It's being fought in Idaho with ballots,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we need to get out and fight that. But the cause is just. You're on the right side. The cause of liberty is the right side. There's no reason to be grumpy and sour about it. We are happy warriors fighting the cause for the people of Idaho, and we can get this done. We just more are with us than are with them, and that includes God's angels. And we need to do that work and win the day.
And pray. We got to pray. You got to pray. You got to turn your hearts to God.
Yeah.
Got to
Well,
do that.
I would add too. I feel like we're having church here. My favorite scripture on politics actually comes from the Book of Mormon, and it's Captain Moroni. This is an LDS scripture or whatever, and it says, I'm going to say it in short because I don't know the whole thing, but it says, a lot of people are like, why aren't you nicer about this? It's like, well, this is important work, and you have to tear down the evil, tyrannical structures of man, right? Captain Moroni, at the end of his epistle to the leader of the government, says, "I seek not for power, but for the honor of God and my country. I seek not for power, but to tear it down." I have no problem tearing crap down. Like, you want to exercise unjust power over me? Let's tear it down, baby. Let's go.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah.
I think there's a revival happening. There are people that are praying in the Capitol every Thursday. They come and pray. There's been some pretty special experiences that have happened there. So, yeah, I mean, we can't discount the role that Jesus Christ is going to play in the saving of our country. And I'm not ashamed to say it. We need more Jesus. More Jesus.
Yep.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
Well,
Where there's God, there's liberty.
yeah.
And freedom, bros. Let's go.
And freedom, bro.
This is
And
testimony
yes.
meeting.
all
Let's
God's
go.
people said, amen.
Oh gosh.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. Well, this has been fun. We're gonna have to do this again for sure. I assume before and probably during the session, and maybe when we're all up in Boise together during the session, we can get together in a round table and have some fun. And we'll let's make ourselves what do they call it? Disagree better this session.
No.
Just kidding. Oh goodness. Anyway, but no, we really appreciate you guys taking the time. I know it's not my freaking bedtime, Dustin. Give me a break, man. I'm not that old. Although I did take a nap today because I was super tired.
Too much. Too much.
Oh,
Did you have your
yeah.
blankie too?
Yeah, dude, I'm tired, man. But no, we again appreciate it. Anything you got, Dustin?
No, I would just say, do better and be engaged. Stop caring about DC. Like, I'm serious. Like,
Yeah.
I'll say this: the people on this call, we're all tired. Like, I'm tired of fighting this fight, and I hate fighting it. But it's something that has to be done. And
Yeah.
yes, that means sometimes I take heat. Everybody does. Don't be afraid. Don't be fearful, and don't back down when you have people threatening you, harassing you, calling you names. Go listen to Tom McDonald's Name song and understand that they're just angry that you're threatening their power, their deals, and their pocketbooks. That's all I have to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Preach.
Amen.
Amen.
Preach.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you again. We appreciate
Okay.
you coming on. Take care.
Thanks. It was good.
All right, man. You finally made it. I
Yeah,
thought you were gonna
sorry.
be like 10 minutes late. And I was
Yeah.
like, do I kind of drag Glenneda out a little bit? And then 9:30 came. I'm like, oh, forget about that. And then 10 o'clock
Yeah.
came. I'm like, holy crap.
Yeah, like I said, so for those who aren't aware, like, I'm Uncle Rico. It's terrible. I'm Uncle
You
Rico.
totally are Uncle Rico.
Yeah, I know. Like, if Coach had put me in, no, we wouldn't have
You
won
would have
the
won
state
state
championship
for
but
sure. Oh yeah.
I own and play in. I own a team and play in a league here in Boise, a football league that's just for old washed up dudes who still want to play football, right? And so we had a league meeting tonight to kind of just handle league business, and it took forever. The only real item I needed to act on was at the end of the agenda. So I apologize to the Freedom Bros audience
man.
for being late, but I mean, Glenneda is amazing. Maria and Ron Nate, oh my gosh, I love them so much.
Yeah, they're freaking awesome. Okay, so the last thing that we're gonna get to here is right after you just got done saying screw the
I know.
national politics.
I
Guess what? We're
know.
gonna talk about debate reaction. because why not?
I
So-
know. It's entertainment at this point. I don't care anyway.
Yeah, and that's. I mean, honestly, I kind of like watching. I hate watching the debates, but I also like watching it because I like to see the zingers that come out of
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Kind of see who really bombs on the debate stage for the most part, who kind of shines, and not that any of it really matters necessarily. Because I think you and I are probably both in agreement that whether you want him to win or not, Donald Trump is going to be the Republican nominee. In fact, I would argue that today's mugshot from Georgia
Oh my
probably
gosh.
solidified it. Here, we'll throw that back up again. You missed that. I actually put
Can the
this
guy
up.
just smile? Like,
Yeah,
can you-
I don't know. I could see both sides of that. Like, don't smile. Like, he's got that stern, I'm gonna kick your rear end look.
don't say the
so,
naughty word.
Yeah, I
just-
caught myself.
I just it's he's a master marketer. I'll say that. He's a
Yeah,
master marketer. You have to
100%.
admire his marketing prowess. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty good. So, I guess before we get to the debate, the actual debate itself, did you watch any of the Trump Tucker interview?
I was really not much.
Not much, okay.
Because I've just been busy and honestly, like, I don't know. The only thing I did watch was the Epstein question. And come on,
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah,
Come on.
So I wanted to watch it because I wanted to see everything that happened last night, but I really wanted to see if Tucker was going to. Tucker normally asks some really tough questions, and honestly, out of everything that was said during that interview, the Epstein one was the hardest question, I guess. The hardest.
Are you serious?
Can you? Yeah, I can't think of one question in there that I was like, ooh, let's see if he asked Trump about this or that. Like, he didn't ask him about the vax rollout. He didn't ask him about COVID lockdowns. He didn't ask him about Fauci. Some of his 2A stuff. I mean, he softballed the entire thing. It still got a ridiculous amount of impressions on Twitter, like hundreds of millions, right? Of people were watching that or liking it or whatever. But yeah, it was I fell asleep. Like, I fell asleep during the interview, dude. It was that boring. I was like, oh my gosh,
That's
this is
disappointing.
not entertaining.
And
Yeah.
look, I understand that the strategery of all of this, right? Like, I understand that if you want your guy to win, Tucker obviously wants Donald Trump over Joe Biden. Like, that's
Sure,
obvious. You don't want to give your enemies any ammo to use.
Yeah.
By the same token, if you're coming at Donald Trump from the right and holding him accountable from the right, like, I don't know why you can't just have a little integrity. And I'm not saying Tucker didn't have integrity, but I wish that somebody would ask some harder questions, because
Correct.
and again, I'm going to offend all our viewers here. Like, and we've had this discussion too. Like, if Trump is not going to debate, he may not debate with Joe Biden because Biden's not going to debate. Voters may never get to hear unfiltered Donald Trump ever in this election. Do you realize that? Like, with him
Yeah.
taking fire, he may never face that because Fox News isn't going to hold him accountable. He's not going to sit down with MSNBC. He's not going to do debates. Okay, he tweeted again for the first time in years tonight, but I feel like it's a bad move not to debate and not to take hard questions from reporters, because, I mean, if it's Donald Trump, he's a hard ass. Like, he's known for being a boss, right? Like,
Yeah. And I know we had this discussion offline quite a bit, and I know that was a discussion a lot of people have had. I think Tucker did ask him about the whole debate thing, and he was like, "Look, I'm kicking their butts, and and Fox News has been extremely unfair to me. Like, I don't want to give." So here's what I will say. I think the GOP for a long time has made the mistake of letting, in a GOP primary, you should be doing honestly debates on Newsmax and people who actually understand your base, right? Who
Yes.
understand the candidates. So I
Right.
get all the GOP candidates coming together and say, we're not going to debate on MSNBC. We're not going to do it on CNN unless there happens to be a decent anchor that will be somewhat fair, if you can find that. So, I mean, I understand his perspective. I get the strategic move if you're in his campaign. But at the same time, like you said, to the broader point, we're seeing this in Idaho too. Candidates, the incumbents are just skipping debates. They're like, nah, I don't want to do it. And Nate Shellman called out Mike Simpson on the freaking radio
was
for skipping the debate, which
beautiful.
is fantastic. I should have cut that.
artistic.
Yeah, and so we're just getting to this point where there's not going to be debates pretty soon because the incumbents are going to refuse to do it. And the people that are in second, they're not going to go debate, the people below them. They only want to debate the person. And then they don't want to debate on particular platforms and media outlets and stuff. I mean, it's just a giant crap show now. So
I will say here's two things that I will say. Just general thoughts on debating. Number one, actually three things. Trump should have debated that, and he should, because it's just if he's going to ask for my vote, he should have to justify himself. I'm sorry, that's just how it works. Number two, I was really disappointed, and this gets to my third point. I was really disappointed that nobody last night asked about gender mutilation surgery. The trans issue didn't come up one time. And I don't know if that's because it's not a hot topic. It is at Fox News, or that Fox News has some, because I know that they have DEI policies and stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they've been pushing the trans stuff.
Why didn't they? And maybe you would say, okay, well, that's not a federal issue. It is a federal issue because military pays for that, insurance, or Medicaid, Medicare. It is a federal issue. Now, do they need to be meddling in all of it? No, but they need to bring it up. And I was really disappointed that they didn't. Third thing. Sorry, if you want to go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
I was just saying before I forget. So I mean, Fox News didn't bring that up at all, right? Some of the candidates, I want to say Nikki Haley and Tim Scott, because I went and listened to the whole thing this morning. They briefly just mentioned like men should be in men's sports and women should be in women's sports, right? And there was a very vague reference to that kind of from those two candidates, and maybe a few of the others. I can't really remember. But the whole transgender issue, which is front and center nationwide right now, completely left untouched by Fox News.
Now, my third take, and I don't even think it's that controversial. You know what I would even pay to watch, like actually pay money to watch, is whether it's the GOP candidates or the Democrat, the Republican, and the Libertarian. It'd have to be all three if it's that format. Joe Rogan, Jordan Peterson, and I don't know, some crazy leftist. I don't know who that would be. But I would actually like a 4-hour sit-down discussion podcast, something like that, where we actually have a discussion and Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson are leading it. Like, I would pay good money for that. Like, because sorry, go ahead.
Matt Walsh kind of talked about what you're talking about. There was 8 candidates. There's too many people, right? Well, and I'm not saying everybody shouldn't have a voice, but it just becomes these one-liners. They're arguing back and forth. There's not an actual debate or discussion. It's just they're trying to get out their one-liners to out one-line the other person, and it's a giant waste of time.
Yeah, I mean, how eager was Chris Christie to get out the Vivek GPT line, and how eager was Vivek to get out the have fun on the boards of Raytheon and whatever the other contractor was. Like, come on, guys. And I understand, like, even as I'm saying that Trump should debate, I understand that debates are largely worthless, but I still think they have some value. I think
they do. They have some value. So I guess with that, I think I took this from Time, and from what I understand, Fox News actually was limiting networks to, you can have like 3 minutes of stuff to air. I don't know anyway. So if you go look on YouTube at a lot of this stuff, it's all the same, 3-minute limitation. So what we did is I cut it into 1-minute segments. I'll roll the first one in order this time, and we'll go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. While you're watching, for those who are still with us after, almost 2 hours of content, I want to hear from you. Drop in the comments who you thought won the debate, who you thought just absolutely bombed, and who surprised you one way or the other. It doesn't matter how they surprised you, but somebody who surprised you.
And if possible, try to be objective. Even if it's your guy, did your guy bomb or did they do? And I know that's hard for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But we're gonna get into that here in a second. So let's roll the first clip.
If former President Trump is convicted in a court of law, would you still support him as your party's choice? Please raise your hand if you would. Just hold on. So just to be clear, Governor Christie, you were kind of late to the game there, but
I'm doing this.
And I know you didn't.
Whoa. Look, here's the bottom line. Someone's got to stop normalizing this conduct. Okay? Now whether or not you believe that the criminal charges are right or wrong. The conduct is beneath the office of President of the United States.
We have to look at the fact that 3/4 of Americans don't want a
Okay, so for those watching, this is, I think, Time magazine cutting just segments that they probably enjoyed, and then that's probably why they put the Chris Christie one first, right? Because he's out attacking Trump. So let's, that's probably why that's there. I do want to say the whole hand raising thing is real. I mean, DeSantis is getting blasted for it, right? Because he's kind of like, me too.
Yeah, that was his worst moment, and absolutely terrible on his part. That's going to define his candidacy going forward, unfortunately.
And well, there's a few. He's getting memed too for a facial expression he made at the end of one of his, it might have been his final pitch or whatever. I will say, again, obviously the people who hate DeSantis are saying, well, look at him. He can't make up his mind. He's looking around and going, okay, and raising a hand.
Right.
And the DeSantis people are saying he was opposed to the whole raising your hand thing. And he did bring up in the debate, we're not freaking kids. Like, let's just debate and not freaking raise our hands for questions. That's stupid. So I don't know if he was kind of like, oh, we're raising our hands. Okay, well, yeah, sure, me too. You know what I mean? So I don't know which one it was. Either way, he's getting blasted for it, and he looked weak. So
well, and he brings up an interesting point, and everything in campaigns is optics, right? You and I know this very, very well. We've both run campaigns. We've both been very successful in this. The reason I hate that is because what's going to happen now is the Democrats are going to take that clip of them raising their hands, and they're going to say, which GOP Republican supports a criminal? Like, that's all that is. Like, and taking away, and this is going back to getting more substance in our debate, right? Taking away that optical thing and actually having a discussion about this, I think matters a lot. Ron DeSantis was right on a lot of stuff last night, but he was most right on that, which, I mean, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. From that first clip, there's not a lot to discuss, I guess, from that first clip, other than, like you said, and maybe that's what he was thinking in his head, like, oh crap, I don't want to raise my hand because I already know how the media is going to use this, to target me. But
okay, I want to stop. We got to stop our conversation because one of our commenters is having an aneurysm right now, like absolute aneurysm. Look, if Greg and I were running the country, we would absolutely put in a test to see if people understood the Constitution, if they lived the Constitution. But that's just not how our campaigns work. It's just not. And I want things to be different too. But we have to live with what we've got. And the best we can do is demand that constitutional obedience, demand an understanding of that, but understand, like, it's just not how our country works anymore. It's just not. I mean,
well, it's so corrupt now. Like, to be honest with there's nobody's running for president who's like this clean, constitutionally based person. They've all got there through corruption, bribing people. They've all flip and change on every single freaking issue, to pander to people. I mean, people who actually believe in maybe what Tunnel Lord and us think we never make it out of like city council. Unfortunately, we're stuck with what we got, I guess.
Well, and what I'll say is to your point too. Yes, there are people who are running on constitutional principles and limited government principles. I'm a registered libertarian because I believe in limiting government the libertarian way. You are registered CP because you believe in their principles and the way they hold it. But
that's
voters,
Constitution Party, by the way, not Communist Party.
Yeah,
Constitution.
That's Party. Not okay. That's an important distinction. That's really important. Good job. You're not going to hear from them because the parties have made it so hard for any other voices. That's why we can have people who are not constitutionally literate, is because they're not challenged publicly by people who understand the Constitution Party, the Libertarian Party. Yeah. It's our fault. It's our fault because our two gangs have made it that way, and we enable those two gangs.
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. All right, you ready for clip 2?
Yes.
between Trump and Biden. And we have to face the fact that Trump is the most disliked politician in America. We can't win a general election that way.
Here's the thing. This election is not about January 6th of 2021. It's about January 20th of 2025, when the next president is going to take office.
Look, Joe Biden has weakened this country at home and abroad. Now is not the time for on-the-job training. We don't need to bring in a rookie. We don't need to bring in people without experience. We need to bring Mr. Ramaswamy, you would not support an increase of funding to Ukraine?
I would not. And I think that this is disastrous, that we are protecting against an invasion across somebody else's border when we should use those same military resources to prevent across the invasion of our own southern border here in the United States. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm going to address each of those right now. This is...
Oh boy. Okay, so honestly, out of this debate, there really wasn't a lot of good one-liners. There were some decent jabs from Vivek, and he got jabbed a few times that were decent. But first of all, Mike Pence, holy crap! If anybody can put you to sleep, it's that dude. He is so dry and boring. It's oh my gosh.
Well, here's the thing. The Republican Party has changed. Trump has changed it, and I think the constant uniparty that happens in Washington has changed the Republican Party, right?
Yeah.
If anybody on that stage did not know their base anymore at all last night, it was Mike Pence, because what he just said is, we don't need a rookie, we need a professional politician. That's what he said when he took that swipe at Vivek. And I don't like Vivek, by the way. But Mike, like, we don't need more professional politicians. Trump was not a professional politician, and he did, as much as I don't like the guy, he did a lot of good.
Yeah.
He's so out of touch. Absolutely. Why is he even in the race? Like, did his wife not want him around during retirement? Or
he's probably one of the founders of the Idaho Main, what do they call it? Squishy Caucus or whatever. Like, it's just this old school way of Republican thinking from like the 60s and 70s, where we can, where maybe there were some Democrats who actually still had somewhat common sense. That's all gone now. And Mike Pence and the rest of them are up there just, talking like politicians. I'm like, people are sick and tired of it. And look, Vivek's not running for president. I think everybody understands that, right? He's not. He was the Trump surrogate last night. And you know what? He was effective. And I would argue that, look, and I don't really have a dog in the fight. I really liked DeSantis initially. His campaign has completely imploded. It's awful. Yeah. I think Vivek took the night. First of all, he was in the middle of the stage, which was helpful for what he wanted to accomplish. Oh, yeah. And then he was taking fire from everybody, right? Just nonstop fire. And he accomplished the goal of kind of stealing the spotlight, getting out some zingers, and kind of pandering to the to the right. So I would have put him on top last night.
I will say that Vivek had some great points, landed some punches, not only on his fellow candidates, but on the root problems of our government. For example, the border thing, absolutely right. Why are we sending billions to Ukraine when we can't secure our border? And as another example of that, Maui, the whole Maui system or situation is disgusting, because what they're getting is like $700 per household for the people who survived. There's more than 1,000 dead. Whole families just burned up, and they get for those who survived, $700, and we're sending billions to Ukraine.
Well, isn't that what the stimulus checks were most of the time? Was like $700 a person or some crap. Yeah, it was like, hey, your entire city got destroyed. Here's $700.
It's like, you can't work for 5 months, and your whole economic ability is gone. Here's 3 sticks of gum, a fudge round, and a can of Sprite. Like,
and Vivek brought that up. He brought up Maui. He brought up the southern border. He's like, why are we spending more? And that was that's really interesting, because the neocons like Nikki Haley and Mike Pence are like, just keep funneling this war, keep going, keep going, keep going. The Ukrainians have been slaughtered, up to 450, 500,000 people now dead. And the Russians aren't losing a whole lot of people. Right. And nobody wants to talk about the truth about that war. But so Vivek's like, why are we funding this war still? Like, this is insane when we have all this stuff at home. So now, whether he really believes that or not, I don't know. But I agree with at least what he said, that we got to stop funding the war.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing that I love most about what Trump offered and brought to politics is so many politicians in their deal making and their lust for power just saw America as something to be traded and grifted on so they could get their money. So we could get money from Burisma, for example. Trump was like, hey, maybe we should put America first. And hopefully that retains, and we can, instead of taking the care, look, I want to take care of people across the globe too. But if people next door to me are suffering, if families are only getting $700 one time from our government, like, that's not great. That's not great at all. That's not good.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
All right.
Last one.
There you have it.
Your watch,
So the reality
make America less safe. You have no foreign policy experience, and it shows.
And you know what? The foreign policy experience that you all have shows in the pointless wars we've gotten into. Let us be honest as Republicans. I'm the only person on the stage who isn't bought and paid for, so I can say this. The climate change agenda is a hoax.
Hold on. I've had enough. I've had enough already tonight of a guy who sounds like ChatGPT standing up here. And the last person in one of these debates, Brett, who stood in the middle of the stage and said, what's a skinny guy with an odd last name doing up here, was Barack Obama, and I'm afraid we're dealing with the same type of amateur standing on stage tonight.
This is exactly why Margaret Thatcher said, if you want something said, ask a man. If you want something done, ask a woman.
Yeah. How long was she waiting to say that stupid line?
Okay.
Give me a break.
There is so much in there, Greg. This is going to take a minute. Hang on, I messed with the gain on my mic.
There you go.
Okay, first of all, she felt so proud of herself when she said that. Did you see that smile after she dropped that line?
She's been waiting all night. Yeah.
Nikki, I understand you're the only woman on the stage besides maybe Asa Hutchinson, but like the Republicans, real conservatives don't play the identity politics game. I don't care what gender you are.
Yeah, don't care.
And here's the thing, like, your record as governor is you got rid of the Confederate stars and bars from your flag. Like, that's what I remember you for. And if we're going about records, Ron DeSantis got it done. Ron DeSantis is getting it done if you want to go head to head there. And then Ron, dude, imagine the intern that told Chris Christie over hamburgers and donuts, like, hey, Chris, you should say this tonight about Vivek. Like, he was waiting for a long time to drop that line.
He was waiting for that. It was stupid. Whatever. It was kind of funny, but at the same time, what was Vivek thinking, lifting that line from Obama's speech? Or was he setting Christie up? Was he setting Christie up going, somebody's going to know I did this, and then it's going to be Chris Christie, and, because he immediately came back with, they didn't play it there, but Vivek immediately came back and was like, oh, I think you need to hug, right? Let's hug it out like you hugged Obama. You helped Obama get elected. Now come, you're going to hug me and get me elected, right? I mean, he came back pretty hard at him.
Ooh.
So it was, but they obviously didn't play that in there. So, I don't know. I mean, Ron DeSantis, again, he was like, meh, he had some good stuff, but overall, I think Vivek and honestly, Chris Christie kind of stole the spotlight, maybe even Nikki Haley. Kind of the three of them mostly, I think, stood out, not in terms of good policy necessarily, but just in terms of who people are going to remember, if anything, after the debate.
Okay, I'm sorry, Representative Gallagher, I cannot get away without saying this. Two things about Vivek's in that last clip. Number one, not a registered Republican. Vivek is not a registered Republican. So it's interesting that on the stage, he says, I'm the only Republican who's not bought and paid for. You're not a Republican, farmer, bro. Okay. The other thing is, and this is the problem with any politician, but Vivek is particularly bad about this. A couple weeks ago, he said in an interview live on TV or some video, something or other, climate change is real. And then he goes on the debate stage, climate change is a hoax. Now, both of those are defensible positions. I happen to believe climate change is bullcrap, but there are people who feel both ways. I just don't want you to feel both ways within a matter of like 3 weeks.
So I dug into this because you know me. I try to go okay, especially when you take a clip and then you take a clip and then
Right.
it's very easy to go, look, he changed his position.
Right.
And there may be a keyword. And again, I'm just going to tell you what the Vivek and Vivek, I think, is probably one of the most, if not the most intelligent person in the race. Okay. He's very, very smart. He's quick on his feet. He knows how
Right.
to debate. I would almost kind of like to watch him debate Kamala Harris, to be honest with you, because I think it'd be entertaining.
Well, that's what he's bucking for.
Right. That's what he's really trying to do is win the VP maybe. But so he said on the debate stage last night, the climate change agenda is a hoax. Okay. In the other clip, he said that climate change is real and some of it is probably man-made. So I could potentially see a distinction where he's saying the agenda that's really, the frickin' what's her name? How dare you, girl? Greta Thunberg.
Right.
How dare you? The Al Gore, that whole
Yes.
mantra of scientists, all of that is a bunch of hoax and a bunch of crap.
Right.
He could, in the other one, I don't know. Again, he could be a total Mitt Romney right now, right? And that wouldn't surprise me.
Right.
I'm just trying to go, okay, devil's advocate. Maybe in the other one, he was saying, sure, the climate is changing, and yeah, we probably have a little bit to do with that, but it's minuscule. It doesn't really matter in the end. I don't know, but I watch both clips and go, okay, I can kind of see a distinction there potentially.
Fair enough. And I'll get with you there. If I want to know, here's the thing. I hope somebody asks him a hard question and pins him down on this because I want to know. And again, both are easily defensible positions. And I actually kind of fall on the free market side. If climate change is a problem, it may be, then I trust the free market. And maybe that's what he was getting at. Like the free market will solve this problem better than any government carbon tax ever will. And that's totally fine. Totally fine. I trust the market with my life, quite frankly. So, give me four, because four is a little hard. Give me 4 names of people who should not be on the next debate stage, Greg.
Yeah. So Asa Hutchinson, the freaking North Dakota governor. I don't even remember his name.
Burgum. Was
right?
he even there last night? Like, I don't know if he was there.
He was there in spirit. So yeah. Burgum, Asa Hutchinson. Definitely should not. Tim Scott should not be up there.
Did he actually answer anything? Like, because I didn't watch the whole debate. Like, was he there? Like, did he say anything?
Yeah, Ben Shapiro, I think it broke down the time stuff, and he was one of the ones that said, and I think it was in his closing, that men should only play in men's sports, and I was like, oh, okay, well, at least one person said it. I don't know. It may be easier to just go, look, Vivek, if Trump's just going to skip all the debates, let's assume he's not in there. Vivek, Haley, Christie, and Pence maybe were the 4 that seem to hit the hardest. And maybe, I don't even know if Christie should be in there. Maybe it's Haley. Maybe it's really Haley, Vivek, DeSantis, and Pence are your 4 people that have somewhat of a chance of coming in second place. I don't know. I don't know.
I think, for the good of the electorate, this is such a clown show. I think you need Vivek, DeSantis, Haley, Pence. I think those are the 4 that should remain. Because Christie, and even Pence, it's like nobody's going to vote for you. Like you wouldn't win against Joe Biden.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just wish we had somebody better to pick from. I really do.
Every election cycle, man, every single time, it's like, can we please get somebody better? Nope, not this time.
No.
I don't. Yeah, I don't. I mean, Paula Hopes chimed in, and here's my concern again with. I don't know how Trump's going to treat the rest of the debates. She said he won the debate by not being there. We already know what President Trump was capable of doing. And I love Paula. Paula's been a longtime supporter of the ISA and stuff. My concern is that's what Brad Little's going to say, right? That's what he did say, basically. You know my record. You know what I'm going to do.
Right.
And that's what Joe Biden's going to say. I'm the incumbent. I already smoked Donald Trump last time. I'm going to crush him worse. I don't need to debate Donald Trump. What's the point of that? So we're creating this atmosphere of nobody needs to debate the other person because we know their record type situation. And that's that. I don't want to get to that point because I think there should be some debates.
Well, and again, it's much like the free market. If I'm going to go get somebody's services, a hamburger, an oil change, I don't know, whatever, I want to know I'm exchanging my value that I have for their value, and it's a mutual exchange.
Yeah.
I have a vote, and some people use their vote strategically. I actually think that voting is a gift from God that we should use properly and give it to those who will represent natural rights. And to trade that vote, to me, is almost a sacred transaction. And if you want my vote, you have to sell me on you. And if you're not going to sell me, you're not going to get my vote. Sorry.
Yeah, for sure. No, I agree 100%. It's not up to me to just vote for whoever, the society says we have to vote for. Like, I think you got to go out and earn it 100%.
Yeah. Well, and again, and I hate the whataboutism in politics, but if Ron DeSantis refused to vote or refused to debate and Donald Trump had showed up, we know that these roles would be reversed, that the Trump people would be all over Ron DeSantis and the DeSantis people would be, defending him or whatever. Like, let's have some principles and some intellectual honesty and cage matches, cage debates. Chris Christie's coming out on top of that one. You know that, right?
You and fighting, he'll just roll on top of people and call it good. So, oh my gosh, that would be. We could. I honestly be okay with world leaders just pummeling each other in a cage match for. Instead of sending people off to war, let's stop doing that, and the leaders of the countries can just go beat each other up in a cage, and
they'd all have heart attacks.
Their aggression, right? Yeah. So anyway, well, man, 2-hour show tonight. 2 hours. That was fun. Thanks for all of you that stuck with us. Holy cow, that was a long time.
I have no idea what we're doing next week. I have to travel next Thursday, so we'll figure it out. Hopefully, there are a couple of candidates I want to talk to, but hopefully, we'll have a good show for you next week. I don't know.
Well, it'll be a good show. We just don't know if Dustin will be with us.
Oh no!
So,
when are we going to do the reaction show? We're going to react to Tom's new one and Oliver Anthony's new one.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we can. We'll figure that out offline, I guess, and hopefully we'll get you guys some reaction videos here soon because
those are fun.
I'm excited. So.
Those are fun.
All right, man. Well, let's roll our awesome over the top stinger. By the way, if you have not heard the Mainstream Caucus stinger, if you even want to call it that, go listen as you're going to sleep because it will help put you to sleep. But this one will most definitely not put you to sleep. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it again. God bless.